I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Ethics Advisory Board for August 19th, 2022. Welcome. And I note there are 4 members present. We're waiting for one more, and I would like to give a couple minutes to see if Gretchen joins us. Particularly because it takes 4 members to take any action. So we have no margin at this point. Kathleen, did you say you had another obligation?
No, I work remotely today.
What's that?
I work remotely today, so I'm okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm good.
But you'd written before, right? Did you, was it Gretchen that wanted? Okay. Many things I can't remember. Gretchen had indicated she has a conflict later. So.
Sorry.
That's okay. Take your time. We'll be here. Yes, so.
Thank you.
It's okay. Do you have Gretchen's name?
Yeah, that's a fine.
Thank you to members of the public for indulging us. We are all here and ready to begin. First item is any changes to the agenda, and I am not aware of any. Next item is public comment. I have one blue card, and if anybody else wishes to speak, you should fill one out and hand it in to the clerk. Zach Wynn, if you'd like to address us.
Good morning. My name is Zach Nguyen. I have been attempting to FOIL request documents relating to this proceeding, and I'm specifically curious about the Reimagining Public Safety weekly meeting that was occurring between the county and the city. Our communications officer for the county, Dominic Recchio, was involved, as was City Attorney Ari Levine. And I'm really curious as to why the substance of these meetings or their purpose was never clarified to Cynthia Brock when she inquired. From what I've read from the complaint, as soon as she inquired about what the meetings were and what their purpose was, they were stopped. And then she received no explanation as to why they were occurring in the first place. And as far as I understand, with the procedures that are laid out, that the Center for Policing Equity should have exclusively just been there to facilitate the meetings and not be directing them or be a majority of the people on the committee. So I'm hoping those documents will be released, and I will endeavor to be better at writing my FOIL requests. And I would hope that the implementation of the recommendations that were a result of the Reimagining Public Safety process would be paused until at least the conclusion of this proceeding, because I believe that those recommendations have been tainted by a process that was had a predetermined outcome. And this is an example of, it's called manipulating procedural outcomes. So I'm hoping that you folks are able to press forward with this as quickly as possible, because the effects of the Reimagining Public Safety process have been disastrous on law enforcement morale and safety here, not just in the city, but in a county level. And I don't blame officers for not wanting to work here, given the tenor of this entire process from its inception, going back to when our governor put out his executive order not long before he had to step down. So with that said, I am going to, I guess there's no time to yield. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Again, anybody else who wishes to address the advisory board? Seeing none. Okay. I'd move on to our minutes from our July 29th, 2022 meeting. Could we put those on the table if somebody would move approval of the minutes?
I would move to approve the minutes.
Thank you, Sharon. Could I get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Kathleen. Any questions or comments on the minutes? I will call the roll. Brian? Kathleen?
Aye.
Gretchen?
Aye.
Sharon?
Aye.
And the chair votes yes. So that takes care of that. We do have one item of business before we get to talking about the ethics complaint, and that's the financial disclosure review report. And you should all have the memo from County Attorney Bill Troy. And I would turn the floor over to him to give a brief review of what he did.
As you can see, I tend to lean towards the succinct. I can tell you that I did review every single report that was put before me. It was done electronically. And I really never had any questions. Everything looked to be entirely okay. And as I say, I found absolutely no reason for concern as to the disclosures. I
Okay.
can't swear to the absolute truth of every penny that was reported on, but I found nothing in those papers that caused concern.
And for the benefit of anybody who's watching, could you just give a brief review of what information is called for from those that have to fill out the
There's a
disclosure
standard
forms?
form that's circulated among those county employees who are at a certain level of responsibility in the county. And it asks for some searching but not too intrusive information about what type of investment you have, if there's likely to be or possibly to be a conflict between your employment with the county and your investments. And I can't tell you it's the most searching questionnaire I've ever seen, but I looked through everything that we did have and there's nothing caused me to question anybody. That sounds harsh, but to make any inquiries about what this represented. So it's not perfect, but I think it serves the purposes it has through the years.
Okay, any questions or comments from the advisory board?
Yeah, I'd like to.
If you could use your microphone.
Is it, are you hearing me? I hope so.
Thanks.
Yeah. I don't know, Kathy, did you review them or did somebody review them when they came in to see they were complete?
Yes, we both did.
Yeah, okay, because, you know, Bill said that he didn't get a chance to look at every one. I'd like to be able to amend his confirmation statement here. And I'm not sure.
I'm sorry, I thought he said he did look at
I
everyone.
did look at everyone.
Oh, you did? I thought you said you didn't go through it. You didn't have.
I didn't search everyone. In other words, I didn't issue a subpoena and do something. I looked
Okay.
at every single.
Okay, good, good. That's good. Then I'd like to amend the confirmation statement to say, after careful review, I found that all the filings submitted complied with section 4 of the County of Tompkins Code of Ethics. I don't know, have you ever looked at our
Yes.
comptroller audits? They're very fastidious. And they might regard this as no reason for concern as being too vague.
I didn't intend for vagueness. I
Yeah.
found absolutely nothing to trigger a concern on my part.
Yeah.
That these reports were anything other than properly concluded.
Would you be comfortable making that further statement?
You can put that into my
Could you
memorandum.
repeat it again, Brian?
Yeah, so I'm making a motion for, after the word "I found," that all the filings submitted complied with section 4 of the County of Tompkins Code of Ethics.
Is that friendly to the mover and seconder?
Second.
Yeah. Sharon, I think you moved. Who moved this?
No, nobody moved it.
Oh, okay. Oh, all right. Then you're moving it, so.
Yeah.
So yes, we'll take a second. Sorry for the confusion in my head. Any further discussion on this? So let's vote. Brian,
Yes?
Kate,
Yes.
Gretchen,
Yes.
Sharon,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes. So I guess it's your memo, so as you so choose to amend, but that's our recommendation.
That's fine.
Okay. Any further questions or comments about the financial disclosure process? Thanks. And I'd like to then move on to the ethics complaint process. And I just noted one of our number has another commitment. So we have about an hour today, but then we're kind of pushing beyond that. I'm not sure we need the full time that we would otherwise allot, but let's jump in. And if we could start with an update on status of discovery responses. One item, I just forwarded an email to all of you from one of the people we've requested information from, Svante Myrek. But you have the email, but I'll read it, or at least a portion of it. Good morning, Rich. I am writing to let you know that I will need until August 31st to compile a comprehensive response to the questions you sent me. I saw in media reports that the city needs a similar amount of time, so I hope it won't prove too large an inconvenience. And for the clerk also, I am crisscrossing the country for our various campaigns, and snail mail often takes quite a while to reach me. Please do feel free to email me any requests or questions you may have. Thanks, Svante. I would be inclined to agree to this request. Does anybody have any objection? Since we're waiting to the 31st for some of the city's response anyway, I don't see a downside to doing that. Okay. I'm not sure we need a motion on that. We'll just convey that, yes, that is okay. We also did receive a response from the city yesterday. And as you can see, it's a partial response that they provided documents, but they also raised certain objections. And they indicated that the narrative portion of their responses would be provided on August 31st. So we're waiting until that point anyway. So I think that makes that reasonable. I have not seen any response, just going down the list, from either Eric Rosario or Karen Yearwood. I believe they're going to respond by the end of the month. The response from Ari Levine of the city was on behalf of Robert Cantelmo, Laura Lewis, Faith Vavra, and himself. So we have something from them, although we'll have to determine whether it's truly responsive. And I don't know if any of you had a chance to look at that. Okay.
Rich, I did look at it and, you know, I'm sort of out of the loop when it comes to politics and I'm just, it just seemed like it was very, I don't know, it sounded like it was very adversarial. And I'm kind of wondering why.
I guess I'd share your assessment, and I don't understand that either. But certainly, well, why don't we?
Could I respond to that, Rich?
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's hold off on that until discussion of material received to date.
Okay.
Let's finish our update just on where we're at in terms of material. We were waiting for a response from CPE, Center for Policing Equity, and I believe Karen Yearwood and Eric Rosario. So the further response from the city and then from those other parties. So that's the status right now, and we'll get into the discussion whether they're complete or not, or what that might all mean in a minute. Does anybody have any questions on where we are? Yeah, Kate.
I have a question in regards to CPE. I know we're going to get to the discussion, the materials received, but some of the information that was raised in the county's response would be nice to be able to be cross-listed with what CPE might say with regards to financials. So I was wondering, I know we've done snail mail as the city used that term, but could we contact CPE possibly by a generic email they may have? I'm just wondering if we could
Speed up the process that way.
I'm just wondering, because I think when there may be a consensus, we need to see what CPE is going to say regards to some things.
I agree. We didn't have contact information for some of the people, so that made it more difficult. But yeah, I think where we can use email, we probably should, you know, although there's some question about service by that method. So mail is,
I think you can do it both ways.
yeah,
It gives them an alert before they receive the snail mail. And we're complying formally with the disclosure principles.
once we have the contact
Right.
addresses, which we didn't have.
Yeah.
So, okay, well, why don't we move on to item 7, discussion of material received to date. And I think that's where, Sharon, you could make your point, which you did, that you don't quite understand the response from the city. Brian, you had a comment on that.
Sure. I think I found it to be lawyerly. I mean, it was a response that you would expect a lawyer to provide. That he said that he wasn't required to respond to that comment because it was outside the scope of our jurisdiction, but that he often did anyway. And he would also say that he wasn't waiving his right to object to it at some future point. So, I mean, I think, yeah, it's not my favorite. I mean, we're issuing an advisory opinion here. I think having all the information on the record, I think the way to deal with things that you don't want to reveal is to ask for an exemption from disclosure and give a reason for that and not cite the jurisdiction question as to what if our scope of discovery is too broad. And that's why I'm sort of disappointed that Paul wasn't able to come today, because I'd like to talk a little bit about the scope of discovery. I go for I support a more complete administrative record so that it's different than if you do a FOIL and you get back a document that's half redacted or 2/3 redacted and you really don't understand. I'd like people to be able to understand, and, having a complete record is helpful for people's understanding. And, so I understand why it was done the way it did. And I don't necessarily, except for one statement in there, take it as adversarial.
Okay. I certainly don't want to put on my hat as a lawyer, and I would defer to Paul because he is our counsel, but having been involved in litigation for years and years, this does fit the tenor of what a typical litigation response is, where you may not really want to provide all of the responses that are requested. I didn't feel this was a fully fleshed out response, and certainly the conclusion that we have no authority to ask questions except for a very, very limited aspect of the city advisory board members being paid, or working group members being paid by a third party. I'm not sure I agree with that. And I also think there's some question as to the scope and of the attorney-client privilege for municipal attorneys is not the same as in private litigation, that the public has certain rights to know, and the courts have interpreted it differently. I think we really do want to get our counsel to give us some advice on whether, as the city attorney says, we have no authority to inquire on certain elements of the ethics complaint we received and the scope of attorney-client privilege that would apply here. So I think that's present status on that one, and I'd recommend that action, if that makes sense to everybody. Yes, I'm seeing nods. Gretchen?
Can I add an idea for, just going to throw out there? As we get more and more information and more input, this response from the city is one. Our guest speaker was another. I think the waters begin to get muddy. And so in addition to where our authority is and isn't, it would be helpful to really have a list of what are the questions we're trying to answer that may be a living document depending on what comes in from other parties. But what are we looking at and what are we not looking at would be helpful. And if there was a shared document for all of us, or I guess email's okay. My email's a mess right now with this group. It's hard to keep track of all the things.
This is an extensive ethics complaint. It really goes in a lot of different directions. So I agree with you that we need to make sure we're maintaining focus. And when you pare it down, I think I said this at our very first meeting, there's essentially 8 questions buried in that ethics complaint. And I think we certainly have to come back to answer those. But you're right too, that if we find that there's additional areas of inquiry that we need to piece the whole thing together, we need to add those, and we should be referring back to that so we make sure we're not meandering too far. Yes.
And that possibly could, each of those 8, cite the section of the ethics code that gives us where we believe it's saying that this is something that we need to address, and potentially publish that so that people can see this is what we're focusing on.
Yeah, and I would rely on our counsel to help us with that too. So, yeah, okay, well, that's a good, certainly in asking Paul to give us an opinion, I could ask him to tie it back to the provisions of the ethics codes, both city and county, that are giving us reason to inquire. Yeah, so, okay, that's status there, or discussion, let's see. As I said, we've received responses from the other parties, being the Park Foundation, Dorothy Cotton Institute, Jason Molina, Matrix Consulting. Did I say the county? And I believe we're at a point we should decide if we wish to make any of that information public. The speaker indicated he was trying to make a FOIL request. Given that the ethics complaint is now public, I'm inclined to say that our requests for information leading from that ethics complaint are appropriate to disclose at this time. And frankly, the responses we've received to date. But I'd love to have some conversation about that if you guys have opinions. I mean, they are available for disclosure pursuant to a FOIL request, so they will become public, subject to potential redactions, but I'm not sure there's redactable material in here.
Do we need to notify the people who sent the responses?
don't think so.
Unless it's considered internal working documents, I think it's subject to FOIL.
Yeah, I mean, if we think that disclosure would prevent us from doing our investigation properly, that would be an aspect. But certainly nobody submitting a response has indicated anything about wishing to redact material if it was made public. We have no restriction from that direction.
My main concern is that it seems to be that there's some effort to make this into a political controversy between the county and the city. And I say this for the benefit of the press person here, is I know it draws more readership to create some level of conflict, and I don't think there is conflict there. I mean, I spoke before about the Office of State Controller that does audits of us to see that we're complying with general municipal law. And I think we're completely consistent in our treatment of this, that, a complaint was filed with us. We took it up and we're proceeding. And I'm sure when they do the audit that there's going to be, they're going to find issues with how we reviewed the ethics complaint. But I just think that if we could tamp down this thing, that there's some level of intermunicipal conflict here. I mean, it wouldn't be happening at all if the city had a ethics advisory board. We wouldn't be involved in this. This is essentially a city issue, and the county is required to handle it. The County Ethics Advisory Board represents the whole county, and the county is actually paying for it. There's some complaints about how costly that the city's effort with hiring a lawyer is, and that it's going to it's costly and it's a more broad, and why do we, what does this added value add? But we don't have a choice. I mean, this is the law requires us to do this, and the county taxpayers are paying for it, not just the city taxpayers. So, I just don't think that you can find a reason to grind an axe about the city-county conflict. I mean, many of the people on this board have no specific relationship to either the county or the city other than being on this ethics advisory board. So I don't know, to infer a political motive to them, I think is really unfair.
Thank you for saying that, Bryden. And yeah, I think one conclusion at the end of our work here will be a strong endorsement of the city setting up its own ethics advisory board, and they can do as they please from that point forward. And I guess I'd also say that the four of you are probably taking some heat for me. I am in the political realm, and so it's fair enough to make accusations or whatever else against me. But the four of you are volunteer citizens who care about good government, and I don't think it's fair to ascribe improper motives to the four of you. And I along the way, I want to say thank you for doing this. This is important, that we try to be as thorough as we can and careful as we can. And this is a process where we do need information from lots of different parties, and we're trying to get it. People can ascribe motives to that, but I don't know what we can do about it other than carry on and do the best we can. But at any rate, I'm asking the question to the four of you. What do you think about disclosure at this point? Kate?
Going along with Gretchen's idea, I like the idea of potentially having a document that kind of explains, this is what we asked for, it pertains to this ethics question, here's our authority to do so. So if that document could become a reality, depending on what our council says, perhaps that's when we release the responses that we've received and tie it directly back to that. So someone can see it, they see the responses, and they get somewhat of a picture all at once, rather than what some people are piecemealing together at the point.
Okay, well, we're certainly going to have, I hope, complete responses from all the people that we've requested from by August 31st. So in the meantime, maybe Paul could address our request for advice and respond in that manner and prepare that document. And after August 31st, we disclose everything. Does that make sense as a path forward?
I don't see any reason why we wouldn't. I guess to me, it'd be better to keep everything in the open, especially when there's some question about the legitimacy of what we're doing and whether we're even acting within the scope of what we should be doing. I think it would make sense to have a document like that and be able to provide the records. This is what we asked for. This is what we received. And, because obviously people are paying attention to this, and it makes sense.
I would certainly like it as public as possible. So for exactly the reason you gave, that the public can judge whether we're doing our job and how we're doing it. Yeah. Okay, so as a pathway forward, I'll make that request to Paul for an opinion, and that it tie back, we'll have a document tying back to the questions from the ethics complaint, the code sections that we're relying on to say that these are legitimate areas of inquiry, and then a disclosure of the information we've received to date. After we receive all that, I think we'll need a little bit of time for all of us to review what's left. But I think we're then due to have a meeting where we deliberate and talk among ourselves. That would be an executive session, so we could freely discuss the material in front of us, followed by, I think, a public meeting where we indicate next steps. I think we may want to talk to some people. Perhaps we have further questions to clarify some of the information we received, but we should do that in public. But I think the next thing to do is to schedule our next meeting after August 31st, when we're all available and have had at least a few days. I don't want to take a lot of time, but for us to review everything. Gretchen.
Can I add a little piece just based on what you described? This might already be clear, but I just want to add, so the list of questions tied to the pieces of the code that defend them or that are relevant, and then what we asked for from whom and what we received. So we've got 1, 2, 3, and that's what we can publicize, and that's truly everything we're going to use to make our decisions as far as we know at this point, unless something we receive points to something further that we need to look at.
So what you're saying is that if we have 8 questions, we want the relevant code of ethics sections, and then the information that we've received that addresses that question.
The questions, and then who we reached out to, what we asked for from them, and then what they gave us. That
Okay.
middle piece was missing in what you just described. You said, here's our questions and here's what we received. But I think it's really important for us all to be aware of what we asked for versus what we received, because we've heard objections on some of that. And so
Yes.
what we don't know also might be telling.
Yeah, we certainly do have situations where we ask for information and we're told we're not allowed to see it. Yeah. Okay. All right. That will take a little bit more work. I mean, that's a lot of collating because we have a pretty good stack of responses at this point, but you're right. And that would probably help us quite a bit in our deliberations and figuring out next steps. Okay. Okay. Does that make sense to everybody? All right. Does everybody have their calendars handy? It seems like Fridays tend to work from the legislative clerk's standpoint. The 31st is a Wednesday. I don't think it's reasonable that we could meet that Friday, and I'm going to be traveling in any event on that date, but the 9th would be the next Friday available. Is that day open?
I am going to be out of town that week.
Would it be possible for you to appear remotely, or are you on vacation?
Yes, it would be possible for me to appear remotely, and yes, I am on vacation.
Oh, well, why don't we,
I would say that similarly, I'll be on vacation. I think I'll be able to do it remotely.
why don't we not have you guys on vacation? You should be sitting in a beach chair or doing something fun. So let's,
Good luck there.
the 16th, is that open? Okay.
I have an all-day conflict on the 16th.
Okay. Well, we don't have to do Friday necessarily. We could do Monday, the 5th.
Holiday.
You guys are taking a holiday? Oh my. How about the, I'm looking at, on my calendar, the 7th?
Rich, I'm on that entire week.
Oh, right, okay, okay. Are you, you said the 16th is bad?
Yeah, I just started a new job and we have an event, so I probably should show up for it.
Yeah, how about the 12th?
The 12th, did you say?
Yeah, at 11?
Works for me.
That works for me.
I think that's okay.
12th at 11 a.m. All right. Second while I enter this. I think that'll give us plenty of time to review the material. And I think Paul will need some time to prepare the document.
I'm not good. No, I will be on vacation the 12th, from the 8th until the 16th, I think. So,
Oof, okay.
yeah, I mean, I'm good at, and whatever I have scheduled the following week, I don't think I don't see my calendar. I haven't been able to pull it up here.
Would you be able to appear remotely on the 12th? I hate to
Yeah,
ask,
I think so.
given the difficulty we had getting a
Yeah,
day.
you know, assuming I can get internet connection, yeah.
Okay, all right. So, good news, we've scheduled the meeting. Any further business to come before the Ethics Advisory Board today? Okay, thank you, everybody, for your continuing efforts, and we will see you all again in September.
Thank you.
In September. I call the meeting to adjournment. Any objection? Okay, good, we're adjourned.